professional, EP. Before we start, I would like to take a moment to recognize traditional Indigenous lands where Eco-Canada's office is based in Calgary. At Eco-Canada, we're committed to working towards respectful acknowledgement, collaboration, and reconciliation with Indigenous peoples across Canada. This starts with acknowledging our honor and privilege to live and work within the Treaty 7 territory. Today, we are presenting from the city of Calgary, home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. We would also like to take this time to acknowledge the traditional territories and oral practices of the Niitsitapi, home of the Blackfoot Confederacy, which includes the Siksika, the Piikani, and the Kainai First Nations, and the Tsuut'ina and Goodstoney, which include the Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Wesley First Nations. Eco-Canada's vision is to build the world's leading environmental workforce. Eco-Canada seeks to help environmental workers succeed at each step of their career journey. To do this, Eco-Canada has developed programs tailored to individuals at different stages for their career. For those looking to enter the environmental workforce, Eco-Canada provides training through the BEAR program and accreditation for environmental programs at post-secondary institutions. Eco-Canada also provides opportunities for new workers to break into the environmental sector through wage funding for co-op students and recent post-secondary graduates. For those already employed as environmental workers, Eco-Canada provides the environmental professionals, EP, and the environmental professional in training, EPT certifications, and EPT students. Lastly, Eco-Canada provides opportunities for those with vast experience as environmental workers to provide guidance and direction to Eco-Canada's products and programs through advisory committees and emeritus memberships. I would like to take this time to introduce Helen Crawley. Helen is the team lead for certification at Eco-Canada and has been with Eco for almost 5 years, providing great customer service. In fact, she likes to describe herself as the membership concierge. She may not be able to get you tickets to a Broadway show, but she can answer any questions you may have about professional development and how to stay in good standing as a member. We will also have Colleen Mahoney joining us for the question and answer period. Colleen has been with ECO since 2022 and is the certification coordinator with the professional services and ESG team. Colleen is also a certified EPT and working towards her EP designation. Over to you, Helen.
Thank you, Danielle. As Danielle mentioned, Eco-Canada is our mission is to look for building the workforce in the environmental sector. And this slide actually just speaks to some of those numbers that help us build that wonderful workforce. As you can see, we have distributed at least $176 million worth of wage funding over the last 25 years. We now have accredited programs, 42, actually I think that should be up to 44. And we also have certified over 7,500 professionals. Next slide. So our certification, we certify Canada's environmental workforce with Canada's only nationally recognized designation. And what that means is that in other provinces where there are designations, professional designations, the associations are under the provincial legislation. So if you move from Ontario, say, to British Columbia, you would finish with one association, and then when you get to BC, you sign up with the association that's in British Columbia. With Eco-Canada, our designation will travel with you. So if you move to any other province, you don't have to do a thing. You are considered an EP whether you live in Halifax, or if you move to St. John's, or if you move to Toronto. You're an EP wherever you are. Next slide, please. Just a little bit of humor here, because we often talk about those little letters that go behind our names. And so this slide just talks about how somebody applying for a job, and he says, no, When I wrote CITP after my name, I meant charming, industrious, trainable, and promotable. Those letters behind your name really, really mean something. If you look at the definition that's provided by the University of Toronto, they talk about the fact that you are put upon you a seal of approval, meaning that you will work ethically, you will work with excellence, and you will work in your knowledge and skills to the best of your ability. Next slide, please. As you can see here, we have been certifying people since 2001. We celebrated our 20th year in 2021. But our very, very first person that we certified in 2001, his name is John Smith, funnily enough. And actually, John is one of our greatest members. He is now retired, so he has become an emeritus member. But he started off with his designation and has now moved to that emeritus status as he's retired, as I said. And so we take care of professionals right from the beginning of their career, whether it's you start off with becoming an EPT student, and then you become an EPT, and then an EP, and then eventually when you retire, the National Occupational Standards, which Eco-Canada put together. And our National Occupational Standards talks about how, if you look at the bottom left corner, it talks about how the environmental different sections intersect. So whether it's environmental protection, resource management, or resource sustainability, those three sectors come together. And within those three sectors, we have about 14 specializations that our members can specialize in once they become certified. Next slide, please. So we're going to take a look at our different certifications. We actually have 4 certifications in one program. So the first one that we're going to talk about is our EPTs. That's Environmental Professional in Training. Our environmental professionals in training have less than 5 years of work experience, so they're very junior. But they are very fastly becoming the next generation of leaders. And then we have our EP designation, which is the environmental professional, which is for our mid to senior level professionals. They have more than 5 years of experience. And then we have our auditing certification. You can either be a CEA, which is Compliance Environmental Auditor, or an EMSLA, which is an Environmental Management Systems Lead Auditor. Then we also have our EP Employer. EP Employer is for companies and organizations, associations who want to take on the certification of being recognized as an employer who hires environmental professionals. So they actually get a certification that has a seal of approval saying that we will hire environmental professionals who have been vetted by Eco-Canada. So they have to have at least one certified person on staff. But we also offer a whole suite of benefits for EP employers, a lot of HR benefits. So if you are coming from a small to mid-level size organization, it might be a certification that you would want to take a look at. Next slide, please. So let's take a look at the EP, the EPT, and the EP auditor. How do you actually become certified? Next slide, please. So for an EPT, we have to confirm your eligibility. So we actually take a look at your education. So you need to have a diploma or a degree. Then what we will do is once you apply, we send you our application guidelines and our EP guidelines for ethical practice. It's $200 for the application fee to become an EPT. And once we take a look at your application and do a review, we do a verification of your education. Once that's complete, then what we will do is we will send you to our approvals board, which is called CCAB. At this point, you don't necessarily have to complete a self-assessment or a peer validation, but it's good practice to do so, because once you become an EP or you go for upgrade, those are some, two things that you do need to complete. Next slide. So becoming an EP, which is the environmental professional, we confirm your eligibility by taking a look at your work experience as well as your education. We then provide an application guide and exam guidelines, because you would have to write the body of knowledge exam, which is 100 multiple choice questions that takes about 2 to 2.5 hours to write. So you would have to find yourself a proctor for this as well. To apply, it's $300, and that includes your exam fee. Your application would go under review. So again, we would verify your employment and education. And then you would go through, as I mentioned in the slide before, you have to go through self-assessment and peer validation. That's if you're specializing. If you go through the self-assessment, this is where our national occupational standards comes into play, and it will help you decide where you need to specialize. And then you write the EP exam. Next slide. To become an auditor, things are a little bit different. You need to have your employment experience, and you need to have a diploma or degree in environmental science or business. You also have to have completed the 35-hour lead auditing training course. I will say at this point that auditors are a bit of a dying breed. When I first started with Eco Canada, I think we had close to 400 auditors on the roster. And now, due to retirement, and that's really what it is, due to retirement, we have now just maybe under 250. So if you talk to an auditor, they will tell you that there is tons of work out there for auditors. You could be busy right up until retirement. So something to consider is becoming an auditor. I would take a look into that, and a good person to talk to about what's involved in that would be Colleen. And if you have any questions about that at the end of the webinar, she would be happy to answer any question that you may have. We will also provide our email address so you can contact her directly as well. So also you would have to write an exam with this. This exam is a little bit different. It's a $450 application fee. The administrative review goes through our expert reviewer. So we will take a look. We do have auditors that are part of the review board, and they would take a look at your application form to be sure that everything is in place, and then you would write the exam. Next slide. So what does it mean to be certified? Next slide. You gain the trust of the public, industry, government officials, and other stakeholders, as this is achieved through collaboration, critical thinking, project management, and continuous learning. Next slide. Yep. You are bound by a distinctive code of ethics regarding relationships with the environment, the public, clients, employees, and colleagues. And you render services based on advanced knowledge, skill, and judgment, which encourages trust and rapport between an EP and the public. Next slide. So once you become approved after you've done the application process, you will receive a certificate that looks a lot like this one. And this certificate, you can use, actually, some people who are our members, when they have their certificates, they need to produce them sometimes when they actually go after projects. So it's good to have your certificate available. It also states when if you're an EP, it states what your certified term is. So for example, if you get certified in June, then 5 years later in June is when your term ends. So these certificates do get renewed every 5 years if you're an EP or if you're an auditor. Next slide. You also get a letter welcoming you to the EP community, which is really important. Our community is one of the best designation communities, I feel, in Canada. Our members are very enthusiastic and very supportive of one another. So it's really great to become a part of this community. Next slide. So code of ethics. You will find with any designation that to work ethically is very, very important. It's one of the reasons why you get certified, is so you can make a statement with your clients and with the public, even with the environmental sector itself, that you will work ethically. So you'll pay attention to environmental stewardship. You'll pay attention to professional responsibility, ethical and moral standards, environmental advocacy, and confidentiality. And this you actually sign off on as well. Next slide. This is our 2022 membership profile. As you can see, the map shows you where our consistent growth takes place, and our top 3 provinces are Ontario, Alberta, and British Columbia. And you can also see that our top 8 companies that employ our members are Stantec, WSP, SNC-Lavalin, Pension, AECOM, SLR Consulting, the City of Calgary, and Matrix Solutions. Next slide. So once you are certified, to stay in good standing, you have to pay your membership every year. So you also need to provide professional development credits. So those activities that will provide you credits come from formal education, informal education, professional contribution, volunteer professional activities, and community and networking. A lot of our members will say, well, you know, I didn't necessarily go to any conferences this year, but there are all kinds of activities that earn you PD. You know, if you are an instructor, if you speak at an event, if you win an award, if you do self-directed studies, if you watch webinars or take short courses, if you go to any networking events, if you're a mentor, there's all kinds of ways to earn your professional development. So our EPs are required to accrue 15 credits per certified year, and our EPTs are required to accrue 20 credits per year. So that's the professional development side of things. The other way that you stay in good standing is, of course, paying your membership fee every year. So for EPTs, it's $130, and for EPs, it's $230. So staff also with EP employer organizations, they get a discount off of applications of 15%, and they get 20% off of their membership renewal fees. Next slide. Some of the benefits that we have for our certification are on-demand training. So again, you receive a 25% discount as a member off of workshops and short courses, and all of our webinars are free. The other thing to note is we have what we call local meetup events. So that's where you can meet all the other certified members that are in your area locally. And one of the things that we will be starting at the end of this year is chapters. So that's also something that you would be able to use as a resource and be a part of. And we also have the EP mentorship program, which is very popular amongst our EPTs because they are automatically enrolled in the program once they become members. Next slide, please. The other thing that we have for environmental professionals in training, EPTs, is something that we put together that's called a training framework. And the reason why we did this is because we recognize that junior members don't necessarily get the opportunities to go on courses and conferences and so on and so forth, as I just mentioned. So we wanted to provide them a way to not only accrue PD credits, but to also be able to learn soft skills. So the training framework, it's a 5-year framework. And once you become a certified member, you're enrolled in the year that matches your education and experience. And then under each of the years, there are core courses that you must take, building courses, and then there's also courses offered that you can just take that are optional. And then in years 4 and 5, it's a little bit different because you're coming into the season where you can upgrade to EP. So we ask you to put together a professional development plan. We ask you to watch the ethics module. There are certain things that you would have to do in years 4 and 5 to get ready to upgrade. And again, as mentioned, our mentorship program is highly popular amongst our EPTs. The platform that we use is called Mentor City. And you might laugh when I say this, but it's a little bit like a dating app. In other words, you go in and you complete a profile. Once your profile is complete, you can take a look at our pool of mentors and you can reach out to one of them and see if they would be willing to mentor you. The great thing about the mentorship program is that it is a tool that is used to be able to put together a career plan. So that's something you can do with your mentor. You can talk about dealing with adversity. You can talk about networking. There's all kinds of things. It is actually an 8-session program. So you can meet once a month for 8 months, or you can do 2 sessions a month. It depends on what you and your mentor decide to do. But it's actually a great way to get exposure to our pool of over 200 mentors that have wonderful knowledge and experience to share. The mentorship program is not put together so that you're able to find a job. You would not get access to a mentor's network or anything like that unless a mentor decides to do that for you. So it's not about finding a job placement. It's actually seeking out experience and knowledge from someone who's walked the road of a career and putting together a plan in place and putting that plan in place for you to be able to find your trajectory and put your goals together. Next slide. The other thing that we do as well is we connect with our peers from coast to coast. As mentioned, we do local meetups. We also have a conference that we do every year, and there's a slide that I'll talk about that a bit more. There's networking events that take place. We encourage people that have published articles to share them with us. We do blog posts and different things like that. And we provide you with industry insights that those come in the newsletter that you receive every quarter. But very popular are our EP meetups. So EP meetups normally take place in either a pub or a restaurant where we take over a little bit of the venue. We provide some nibblies. You provide yourself with drinks. But it's a great way to network and meet those who work locally. Because one of the things that, of course, in the environmental sector that it seems to be, people can actually end up working in silos. And so this is a good way to get out of that and to recognize that you're not alone. And some great collaboration takes place through doing these networking events. So they're very, very important. Next slide. As I mentioned, we do have a conference that Eco Canada hosts every year. It's called Eco Impact. And it's a learning series and awards gala. So it's a great way to meet other professionals within the sector. It's also a great way to learn some things from people who might work in your specialization. It's also an opportunity to come together to collaborate. And we also hand out awards for the top EP, the top auditor, the top EPT, and then we have 2 other awards. One's a Community Impact Award and then the Top Employer Award. And those 2 awards get voted on by the public. So we try very much to have our members become involved and to make sure that their voice is heard. So this is a great event for you to be able to attend. Next slide. And that's it. So we're going to open up the floor for questions. And as Danielle mentioned, my colleague Colleen is also taking place as part of the webinar. She's in charge of all things applications. So if you have any questions with regards to applications, she's the person to check with. But you know, what questions might there be?
A few questions, so I'll just ask them to you, Helen. The first question is, how does the environmental, oh, sorry, I'll read this one first. Can individuals with international environmental experience apply for the EP designation in Canada?
Yes, they can. When it comes to having international experience, you need to have, of course, whatever experience you have needs to be for 5 years. But for international people, they need to have 1 year of Canadian experience added on to that.
Okay, that sounds great. We do have another question. Can individuals from non-environmental backgrounds pursue the EP designation? And if so, what steps should they take?
Oh, Colleen, I think that's one for you.
Thanks, Helen. Definitely someone without an environmental background who wants to start a career in the environmental sector is certainly eligible for our designations. The EPT designation, the only requirement is that you have a 3 to 4 year bachelor's degree or a 2-year diploma from a post-secondary institution. It doesn't have to be an environmental degree. As long as you meet the education requirement, you can apply for the EPT designation. You won't be able to apply for EP until you do have that 5 years of Canadian environmental work experience, though.
Right, but there is a path for success there. That sounds fantastic. Are there any specific skills or competencies that individuals should focus on developing to enhance their eligibility for the environmental professionals designation? But it sounds like anyone with an environmental background can do so. Is that correct?
Yes, I would say so, yes.
So there's no specific skills or competencies that individuals should focus on?
What do you say, Colleen?
There's no specific skills to concentrate on, but you should probably take a look at our national occupational standards to understand which specializations are available to you. As an EPT, when you look at those, you can learn where you need to gain experience. And as an EP, you can see where you can become certified and validate your experience.
Wonderful. Is there any specific industries or sectors where the EP designation is particularly valued or recognized?
Oh, that's a good question. I would say yes, and the only reason why I say that is because, like for example, ecologists. There's not really a designation. I know that people have talked about, you know, P-Bio, but P-Bio doesn't necessarily accept the courses that an ecologist has done. So that is one area where our designation would actually really fit. And we do have a few ecologists as members, and they would say the same thing. But one of the other things, like I guess I could talk about this right here, is we do have members who have gained their certification with us that have other designations. But the reason why they do that is they find that ours complements their other designation. So for example, somebody who is, a P-Bio, we'll take that one since I've already said it. And if they want to highlight the environmental side of what they do, that's the reason why they take on our designation. It's because they want to highlight the fact that yes, they may be a biologist, but the work they do is strictly within the environmental sector.
So really quite a valuable designation to have.
Yes, yes.
How does the EP designation contribute to career advancement and salary potential in Canada?
Oh, that's a good question too.
It does.
Well, I'm not sure how it would affect salary, but I do know, as I mentioned during the presentation, for our EP employers, if you have your designation and you put in your resume to an EP employer, the resume actually will go to the top of the pile because you've already met that requirement. So I would say that as you're looking for a job that way, definitely the certification is very valuable.
Yeah, that seems incredibly valuable for sure. Now, here's a question for Colleen about auditing. What are the benefits of becoming an auditor? And why isn't there not as many? If they're all being retired, is there going to be some fresh blood coming in, or is that what we're really trying to do here?
There's definitely going to be some new auditors coming on board. The reason to get your auditing degree is that it shows that you have a certain level of experience doing the types of auditing that needs to happen within the environmental sector. Certainly the demand for auditors is out there. As Helen mentioned in the presentation, auditors are extremely busy at all times of the years. Companies have to be audited to show that they're meeting all of the regulations and legislation, and only a certified professional as an auditor can provide that qualification.
So that's really a career where you could work the rest of your life and have as much work as you possibly could want. That sounds fantastic. Okay, so we have one last question. And the question is, are there any additional resources or support provided to EPs through EcoCanada?
Oh, well, once you have access to your account, we do have a section on benefits and resources. Just some of the extra benefits I can tell you about is we have insurance benefits. You're automatically enrolled to receive benefits if for accidental death and dismemberment. There's also insurance on errors and omissions. That's really important, especially for our consultants. You also have access to retail benefits, and there's also travel benefits as well. And then when it comes to resources, all the publications that our research team puts together, you have access to those as well through your account. Yeah, there's quite a suite of benefits. I'm sure I'm forgetting a few things, but I would say that those are the main ones.
Absolutely.
Can I just add one more thing too? As a certified member, you do get that discount on online training courses. Right. And our training courses are a really good way to stay up to date and current with what's going on in the environmental sector. Plus, you get free access to all of our webinars. And again, that's a very good way of staying current with what's going on in the environmental sector.
Yeah, that's a real boon for people's professional development, all of those webinars and all of those extra offerings. Well, I think it sounds like a wonderful, wonderful designation. Any last words from you?
I just would really like to encourage people to really consider becoming certified. I work, as Danielle mentioned in the introduction, I work very closely with our members. And I can tell you that this is a community that you want to become a part of. They're very much supportive of each other. They're very much into, like when it comes to the mentorship program, we have over 200 mentors in place. They're very much into giving back and seeing the next generation grow. So, you know, I would really consider becoming a part of this community. It's very, very important.
Sounds like a wonderful community. Colleen, anything less to say?
Come join us.
Wonderful. Okay, that's all the time that we have today, ladies. So thank you so much. I encourage everyone to contact them at ep@eco.ca, and they'll answer any questions you have about what kind of benefits and what the possibilities of joining our designation could be.